Kundalini. An Occult Experience by George Sidney Arundale. Chapter 7. The High Purpose of Kundalini. The process of working up and down the spine having been begun, the next business is to set up movement between the various centers. The first valid center is the solar plexus, and communication is to be established between the base of the spine and the solar plexus, round about the navel. The touching of the solar plexus gives rise to the same sensation of expansion of consciousness as in the case of the spinal movement. The stomach may, and probably will, feel some disturbance, a sickish feeling. But that does not matter. The student did not trace how the force reaches the solar plexus, but it seems to be by a roundabout way. Whenever a center is vitalized with the fire, there is a sense of expansion of consciousness and of highly stimulated faculty, and particularly is the intuition developed, since there is greatly increased contact between the higher and the lower bodies, the higher fortunately being able to dominate, or the process of arousing Kundalini would not have been permitted. As it is, not only is there absence of the slightest sexual disturbance, but such remnants of sex nature as there may have been seem to be transmuted and transformed into their true purpose, virility and creativeness, and thus godliness. Instead of being confined within localized creative power which partly assumes the form of sex impulse, life begins to dwell in the universal creative principle, in the fire of creation. The lower ascends into the higher, the particular into the universal. And when the particular becomes lost in the universal, thereby discovering its true eternity, then the universal descends to take up its abode in the individual. This is part of the objective of Kundalini. It is sometimes thought that the development of Kundalini leads to clairvoyance and continuous autoplacosis, or to the linking of the various levels of consciousness, so that other states of consciousness may be connected with the waking consciousness. This does take place in due course, but of far greater importance is a very real transubstantiatio, the higher consciousness becoming jewels in the setting of the lower, the higher taking up its abode in the lower, that is to say in the waking consciousness itself. The lower knows itself to be a setting, and offers its substance for the jewels of the higher. This is in fact a setting up of continuous consciousness. Whether in fact clairvoyance, etc., arises or not, though in course of time it will, is of far less importance than the definite establishment of the higher consciousness budding and later evasi the waking consciousness, this being the high purpose of the arousing of Kundalini. This means, as has been said, an extraordinary vivification of intuition, pure knowledge untainted, undistorted, by the personal equation, for into awakened buddhic and evaic consciousness no universalized personal equation can ever enter. The personal equation is transcended, the desires of the lower self begin to be transmuted into the will of the one great self. We may trust to an intuition vivified, purified, by Kundalini, but we must take care that we allow no outside considerations to distort. If we dwell in the realm of pure intuition, our conclusions are likely to be true. Let us trust first impressions provided we sense them as coming from the depths of our being and not from the shallows. The arousing of Kundalini should establish us permanently in the real. This is its supreme objective. All other results can only be incidental to this great end. There seem to be two general systems of Kundalini development, one which proceeds slowly, very slowly, and carefully, little by little, perhaps extending over lives, the various psychic faculties being developed pan passu with general growth, the other being to leave the positive arousing of Kundalini till the last moment, so to speak, and then, when all is safe and the word of the Master has gone forth, to arouse Kundalini with a rush. This method has in one sense more of risk in it, but there should not be any if the individual is alert. I am reminded of the launching of a ship. She goes down, gradually increasing in speed, into the sea, but only after all details of the slipway are attended to with most meticulous care. But once she is set going, she quickly takes the plunge. In some cases, this latter method is employed, in others, the former. As a setting for the right development of Kundalini, there is always an extraordinary desire to use the intensified power to help others. There is often the deliberate turning of oneself into a negative photographic plate, exposing it to those nearby, that their needs may be directly known. This longing to be of service to others is greatly stimulated, and indeed much more help can be given, because of the vivified intuition. One even feels inclined to advise some of one's friends, if they ask, quite frankly as to what they need, the advice being available because the individual has discerned so very clearly, with the aid of Kundalini, what he himself needs. He can help others because he has discovered how to help himself. But discretion and tact are the better part of valor, and one must not hinder in the effort to be helpful. This audio file was created by Payoprita Basic. You can download it at payoprita.com.